Hello, everybody. Welcome to day one of the 3 days in three ways in 3 days workshop. And this workshop, what I'm going to do, you're going to learn 3 different eye-catching ways to create focal points in mixed media with ways that you can repeat over and over again. So I showed these 3 different ideas that we're going to be doing on day 1, day 2, and day 3. So I want to know if this is you, and you can tell me in the chat as I see some of you finding the live video and ready for day 1. Tell me if this is you. Do you watch a lot of tutorials about how to do mixed media, how to paint, how to do art journaling, how to letter, how to blend paint? Tell me if you watch a lot of tutorials. Tell me if this is you. Do you have all the supplies in your space to be able to do all of those projects that you've watched for all of the tutorials that you've seen, that you've wanted to do? Tell me if this is also you. You have all of those supplies, you've watched all the tutorials, but you are overwhelmed with all of those things and all of those ideas that all of those materials, all of those supplies that you bought are unopened, and you are still left staring at a blank page, a blank canvas, a blank surface. Tell me if any of those are you. My name's Jamie, and that was me. That was me before 2020. Before 2020 is when I had started accumulating supplies and watching videos and getting the supplies and then just feeling stuck and really not knowing what to do with those. That is part of the reason why I created this group, part of the reason why I do what I do, and part of the reason that I created this workshop. Because at the end of this workshop, I have a couple of, well, really just 2 main goals that I want to have you accomplish after you finish watching these 3 days. One is I want you to use your supplies. I want you to open up the packages, I want you to get them out, and I want you to use them. And 2, I want you to create. That is one of, that's just what, I just want you to create. And those are the very 2 simple reasons why I created the workshop. But what I'm hoping that you will learn by the end of the workshop is, and what you will do is actually create all 3 of these designs. All 3 of these designs. And actually, I'm going to give you a timeline. I want you to create them within the next 5 days. I want you to create them before Monday. And I'll tell you why a little bit later here in the video. But I want you to have these 3 ideas. So I want you to finish them before Monday. I want you to leave these 3 days having 3 different techniques that you can use over and over again, really with any kind of subject. We're going to use hearts because they're fun and easy and just a relatable thing kind of this time of year with Valentine's Day coming up in February. But I want you to have these 3 ideas at the end. And I want to teach you a little bit about how to create focal points. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples as we're working of pages and artwork and things that I have used and done with the technique that I'm going to show you today, which is what I'm calling the added focal point. So this is an added focal point, and you'll understand why as we kind of get started. So tell me if, and you can tell me in the chat here, I can't see any of your comments yet, so I will definitely, I'm going to try to keep this video to about 30 to 35 minutes today, just so you have an idea how long. The replay will be in featured. So after it's finished, it will be in featured. You can go watch the replay there if you want to come back to it. But the I'm planning about 30 to 35 minutes. But tell me in the comments, and I will definitely come back and look at the comments, if, number one, you have marked going in the event that's also in featured for day 2 and day 3. Because if you marked going for day 1, you probably got a notification. You got a reminder from Facebook that this event was happening. So if you go into the event and mark for Thursday and for Friday for day 2 and day 3, you will get a notification and a reminder. Whether you're watching live or you come back and watch the replay, I know that's helpful for me just to know that I have a reminder. And little pro tip here, if you're on your phone and you mark that you're going, it'll give you an option if you go to the 3 dots that you can add it to your calendar. And that for me is, it's on my calendar. It's probably going to happen if it's on my calendar. It's just in a notification, it might not. If that's not enough and you actually want more, tell me if you were on my text list, because every day of the workshop, I am going to send out a text reminder when I go live. So right about at 12 o'clock that I am going live, and it'll give the link directly to the group. Now I'm scheduling them ahead of time, so I can't give you the direct link to the video. But if you come to the group, just refresh and scroll a little bit, and it should be at, the top of the feed there. But if you get a text reminder, then it'll just give you a link directly to the group, and you can just come and watch the video. I prefer text messages whenever possible, so I wanted to give you that option too. I usually just send those out for when I go live in this group. And tell me if you have downloaded the resources that I provided. And I want to tell you the reason that I made these a download is I'm going to be sending out emails for reminders and the replays and things like that for the people who are interested in the workshop. And the way that I can tell that is you've downloaded the resources, which has the supply list, the directions, images of the 3 days, and that way you'll be on my list to receive the emails for this particular workshop. And a couple of fun things that I'm going to tell you about for the end of the workshop too. So if you have downloaded the resources, it is in featured. You'll see it in the event, and I'm going to be using the directions, just kind of the basic directions that I gave for day 1 today. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to move my phone over to my stand over here so you can look down at my table and see more about what I'm doing for day 1, which is the added focal point. And I will show you the supplies and everything. So let me go ahead and flip the camera around, and then you can see my window. It looks very bright out right now because it is day 17, I believe, of snow on the ground here for us in Ohio. And it is frigidly cold today. Okay, supplies for today. I am using watercolor paper. It is from a watercolor pad from Artist Loft. It is 140 pounds, and it's the 9 by 12 inch size. So I have taken a sheet out, and I'm going to show you how to divide that into pieces for all 3 days. So you just need 1 sheet for all 3 days. And then I'm working on one of these pieces of plastic just to make it easier so I don't have to wipe off my table. We're not going to get too messy over these 3 days, but I just kind of like to work on that space. So I'm going to take my ruler, and on the back of the watercolor paper, I like to use the back, I'm going to measure. So I need a pencil. I'm just going to kind of show you the supplies as I'm using them. And this is 9 inches across, so I'm going to make a mark at 4.5. Now, if you have a paper cutter, you could do this on a paper cutter. I just wanted to show you, whenever I measure, I make 2 marks. So I'm going to go down here and I'm also going to mark at 4.5. Each one of these squares that you're going to use for these 3 days is a 4.5 inch square. So then what I do is I line up both of those marks. And usually what I'll do is just kind of go up here and check it. And it's also 4.5 inches. And then I will go over and mark 4.5 inches. Oh, my lead just is broken on my pencil. I usually like to use a mechanical pencil. I think when I was trying to sharpen, I didn't measure twice right there. I'm just going to kind of line it up because my pencil's not going to mark very easily. And then I will go over here, and I believe it was right here. You will actually have 4 squares. We're just going to use 3. So go ahead and cut that with your scissors, an X-Acto knife, a paper cutter, and you will have 3 pieces for all 3 days. So that is number 1 right there, about measuring 4 squares that are 4.5 inches. So you have 3.5. You have 3 pieces to be able to use over the day. The next thing that I'm going to do is cut out also a 4-inch square from a piece of copy paper. And if you don't have copy paper, just use anything. Like, just use any kind of paper. And I'm going to just use one of the squares that I've already cut out, which is the one that I'm going to work on today. And I'm just going to trace around it. But you will just need this one. I'm just going to use my pen to do that. Here's a little extra for you. If you have not started using these friction pens, they're erasable. So this I can erase afterwards if I needed to. But the you can also use a heat gun and it will disappear. So I'm going to cut out this square so that it's the same size. And this piece of paper, you may want to use this on all 3 days. I will just tell you ahead of time, you may want to save what we're going to do here. And this is just something that we have all probably done for years and years, is a heart. And I am right-handed, so I'm going to have the open part on this side. And I'm not going to have it come all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom, because I want a little bit of space at the top and the bottom. But I'm just gonna do a heart, you know, just the half of a heart. You can draw your heart. Well, you'll see. You can do any kind of shape. It doesn't even have to be a heart. But this is what we're doing for this project, is a heart. And you can be more creative, I guess, is what I'm saying. But if you are that person who has a lot of supplies and you have a lot of ideas and you've watched a lot of tutorials, sometimes when you want to be creative, it keeps you stuck. So there's my little heart. Positive and negative is what I'm calling those. We are going to use the positive one today. I am now on to direction number 4. Look, we're almost halfway through. Direction number 4. And what I am using for the collage part of this project is the papers on the heart here. These are already printed papers. And I'm going to show you some examples of what I'm going to use. You can use these beautiful pieces of scrapbook paper. I don't know if they're called scrapbook. They're just papers. Look at this one. This is a vintage Valentine one. So these are just like sheets of paper that come in the little packs, right? And I'm sticking to the reds and the pinks. That's maybe a little bit too muted. I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm going to use this one. This is kind of a thinner weight paper. You don't want anything like too thick. It can be a little bit thicker than the copy paper, but for the gluing, for the collaging, it can be a little bit heavier with this one, but I think that I'm going to use these two papers. Any kind of paper that you have that's already printed. I got this one out too, but I don't think it goes with these three. And then I have this paper too, but I don't know that it goes really with those either. I have this one with all these petals, and I think that's where oh, look how pretty that is. So any kind of printed paper that you have. Some of those are, that one, ooh, purple. Purple would be fun too, if you want to do a purple. But I also have, you know, some of the larger printed sheets of paper, or I have a couple of resource books that I have made available of designs that you can print out, so they could be papers like that too. And I actually do like these because they're on the copy paper. So, oh, here is another paper that I think I have to use this one. Ooh, I don't know. Now I'm kind of rethinking my colors. Okay, don't get too stuck like I am and rethink the colors that you want to use. But look at this pink color. I think I need to do that. And if I'm going to use that, then I can use that. And now I need one more sheet that is a little bit brighter, maybe pink, to use. So let's see if I have, see, that's a little bit too muted. Don't spend too much time picking out, I'm picking out 3 pieces of paper. Maybe, I think that'll work. Pick out 3 sheets of paper, and what we're going to do is to collage onto our heart using a glue stick. And I will tell you, my favorite glue stick right now is this Yoo-Hoo glue stick. I got a package of 10 of them. And what I'm going to do is to rip strips of paper, and I'm going to glue them onto the heart. So I have this one that I'm going to start with, the pink, and I want to start down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to rip, I know it's not going to need to be a very wide piece, so it's going to kind of go down at the bottom, but I'm going to go ahead and rip a couple more because I picked out, oh, look at the back of this one, that's pretty too. I might use that too. This is where you get stuck if you have too many ideas and you don't just like do something with them. So I think that will fit. So each one of the papers I want to use like 3 times. And that's just kind of a, I think I might use this back side here. That's just kind of a good rule of thumb to use something 3 times. For repetition. To have something be unified. I don't like that little piece right there. So that's probably going to have to go up in there. And I also want this paper because I think this is fun. This is like a little gift bag, and I'm just going to use it for paper. I actually think that might be kind of fun to have that little edge. So I'm going to rip so that I can get a couple of those. I don't know about you, but there's something so satisfying about ripping paper and gluing paper onto another piece of paper for collage. I don't know what it is. Like, it makes you feel like a kid again. Look at how fun those little edges are. So I think that's probably going to be, I'm just ripping strips. Again, you can be more creative, but I'm showing you an idea that you can repeat. And I'm going to show you another page where I did exactly this idea. And I have another piece of that on this side. So let's see if I can rip this bag apart and use another piece of that. So I have 3 papers and I am using each one of them 3 times. So that is pretty easy to remember. We'll keep this one pretty long. Okay, so I have all of my strips. And I don't know that I'll do them in order or in any kind of order. But I'm just going to take my glue stick. This is where having it on a piece of plastic is really helpful. And I'm just going to put some glue down in there, and it's going to overlap on the sides. And I think then I'm going to take this one because I like the contrast of that dark color with these little teeth edges. And you'll see how once I have the papers ripped out, it goes pretty quick. There's not as much contrast, but I kind of like the little flowers next to that other white paper. So let's see if my longest dark pink piece will go right across there. But you see how quick this goes? After I kind of have the papers ripped out, whatever shape you're doing, it's just gluing the strips of paper on top of it. You can tell me in the comments, like, what other kinds of paper could you use beside, or what other kinds of shapes could you use? Now, I don't have another one of these that are long enough. So here is what I'm going to do. This was another little piece that I had. I have more of that paper too I could actually use. But I'm just going to glue that down on there, and then, so it's okay if it doesn't go all the way across. And then I'm going to take this piece and this up here. And I'm going to go ahead and rip this apart because I only need a small piece, but I need 2 of them, right? I need 1 for each side. And just like that, my heart is done. And it just lifts right off the piece there. And because I've glued this paper on, it kind of strengthens this copy paper a little bit. I'm going to let that dry just so I'm not cutting while the glue, you know, I might have some glue like around the edges on here, so that I can show you about the back page here. With this added focal point, I am going to add this piece over the top. I'm going to make the back with a piece of book paper, and I'm going to do some writing on the back here. And this is kind of legible, like I was actually writing words, but I was just kind of, I call it like scribble writing. I was just like scribbling on there. But you can also do what's called systemic writing. And that is just like made up writing. So you can either do scribble writing or you can kind of do like the made up writing. And I'm going to take this book paper. It can be any printed paper. Honestly, I have one of these sheets of paper. So we're down here to the number 6. You can add systemic or scribble writing. But it could be something like this that you printed out that you don't need anymore, that you're not going to use. And you could use this, you know, printed paper. It could be directions. It could be a catalog. I like to have the writing on here, and I like to have the book paper, but then I like the extra added layer on top of it. So I'm just going to do one sheet of paper, and I'm just going to do kind of like scribble writing and kind of go across. I'm using this gold metallic marker. I'm sure this is from the Dollar Tree. And the reason I like the gold is it just kind of stands. I just like the gold. There's no reason. You could use a black marker, you could use a pink marker, you could use a Posca. What I will say is this is a, I thought that it said on here, I believe that it's a permanent marker. So you want something that is permanent, that's not going to be affected by water, really. And just like that, I have my back sheet done. So let me find my, oh, my square I'm using. Here it is, here it is. And basically now we're just gonna assemble it together. So I'm going to take and cover this with glue. And I'm just going to glue this whole sheet of paper down onto this. We call this a substrate, my surface. And I'm just trying to get it so that all of the writing is kind of, you know, I could line it up with this edge over here, but I didn't want that kind of white space. So I'm just gluing all of that down on there, rubbing it down, making sure that my lid is on my glue stick. And then I'm going to flip it over. You could, again, use your X-Acto knife cutter. I do have this little cutter thing that I got, and I just haven't gotten it out of the box yet. And after I get this done, one of the things that I like to do, especially, I think these would look so cute, all three of them together. You know, day 1, day 2, and day 3 all together, like in a frame. They could look good, you know, stacked like this in a frame. We'll talk more on day 3 about how to, you know, what to do with them and different things that you can do. But one of the things that I like to do is to just kind of finish off the edges. So in the supplies, it talks about, well, and I'm skipping to number 9 here about using the stamp pad. You can kind of do some of these steps out of order. But I have this little Stampin' Spot Pink Passion, and it is a Stampin' Up stamp pad. You don't necessarily have to use a stamp pad. I will show you what I used before I had a stamp pad. But I like to go around the edges, kind of holding my stamp pad at like a 45-degree angle, so it'll catch a little bit of the top. And I just like to, especially around the corners, I like to do like a little bit more kind of in there, and, you know, even pick up like some of the little wrinkles and things like that, and have a little bit of that go over. And this just creates like a border. It just kind of frames it. It just gives it a little finishing. But what I did before I had stamp pads, because the thing about mixed media, the thing about art journaling, is you start to collect different supplies, but some supplies you can't have like all of the supplies, all at the beginning. So what I did instead of using a stamp pad is I just used a marker, and I just colored on the side, and kind of, you know, you can even kind of color in like where that paper is on the side there, because it's a thicker paper, and it really kind of frames it off that way too. You don't have to have stamp pads, is what I'm saying. The background is finished, and my heart has dried a little bit, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut around the heart. These are a pair of scissors that I've had for a long, long time, and I love the size of them. They have continued to stay sharp. They're a Creative Memories scissor, and there I have a little place that I need to tape down. I save all of these little scraps, by the way. I might show you on day 3 some of the different ideas that I do with this. So I'm just going to take my glue stick and I'm going to make sure that I glue that little piece down. And if you find any other little places after gluing, but how fun is that little heart? I love the little teeth on there and the contrast of the darker colors in there. They're fun too. And with the focal point, because that's what we're talking about with this added focal point, I'm going to be adding this on top of the background. So think about, you can use this technique, this idea, with any kind of shape. And I'm going to show you to finish off just some different pages and things that I've done with this idea of adding on. I'm adding it over top of the background. Your background could be anything. It can be any kind of way that you do the background. It could be painted, it could be stenciled, any kind of background. And now you're adding your focal point, your object, your thing that you want to stand out, the thing that you want someone's eye to go to when they look at your artwork. You're going to be adding that on top of the background. I'm not going to talk about like where to place it and all of that kind of thing. I just wanted to work on just the focal points. But before I add this down, now, depending on what colors you use, you might not have this as a something that you want to do. But when I look at this white, it's really close to this background. So I want this edge to stand out more, just like I did with this edge around here. So I'm going to use the stamp pad again. And I'm just going to go around the edges. And the thing about this now is I have other edges. I have these edges that I have created by those scrap pieces of paper. So I'm going to show you, and I'm definitely going to hit these edges because they're lighter. And the edges where I have the white on there. And now just like that, now there's more of a border. One of the other things that you can do is to take your stamp pad, and if you want to pick up some of the texture on here, is you can kind of drag your stamp pad kind of on those edges, and you can start to see like where it starts to pick up some of the texture of the paper. And I kind of like that, oh, what do you call that? Kind of like a rustic, what's the word that I'm thinking of? A rustic, a vintage, a grungy. I kind of like the grungy and just the little extra added color on there. So now I don't have as much, you know, white on there. Just another little idea. Now, if you don't have a stamp pad, that does get a little bit harder. You could try a marker, but you're not going to get the same kind of grungy kind of feel because this is going to like bleed into the paper. You can do it around the edges with the marker, but not so much with that. So I'm going to take my glue stick and I'm just going to add this on. This technique is one that I use, I would say 25% of the time that I do anything, any kind of art piece, I use this technique. I do a background, and whatever my focal point is, I glue it on. Look how that worked out. That line is right in the middle. I don't even know how I worked that out. That was like a happy accident. And that, look at their same technique and so different because I used a different pen in the back here. This is kind of more of a coppery gold, and the papers were completely different. This with the bright pink, I love that, and the little, you could cut your edges with those like pinking shears or decorative scissors. There's so many different ways that you can do this technique for a focal point of adding it on. So I'm going to show you to kind of finish up one that I did. If you were watching during the Christmas card challenge in the group here, I did a journal where I did 25 pages, I think, in this one. And this was one of the techniques exactly the same. It was an ornament. I used papers where I overlapped over top, and I cut that out and I put it on the back of that gold background. Very same technique, just an added focal point. This was another one. I did these circles. This was actually a paper that I had. I think it was tissue paper. And I glued that down on there and, kind of painted it and did lines. And it was just a background. But then I cut out this poinsettia, and it's actually 2 layers. So it's 2 layers of paper there. And that's an added focal point that I had. And I kind of did some of the edges and, added these little gems in the middle there, but it's still the same technique. I probably have this technique about 25% of the time that I used in here. And then this is kind of a different one. I did this whole grid in the background and just used different colors, and I added on this focal point in the middle, which was an image that I had cut out. Still the same technique, just using it in a different way. So that is the added focal point. A couple of different things that you can do. I am going to have a post in the group to share your finished added focal point. And I'm going to put it into the group. I don't have it in there yet, but you can share into the group and just make your own individual post. If, however, you would like to be included in a little giveaway that I'm going to do on Monday, I'm going to pick from anyone who has submitted their picture on the post for day 1, 2, or 3. So all you have to do is one of them. And if you post in there, if you do all 3, then your name is going to be in there 3 times. But if you post and do one of these, because my incentive is try to have you do all 3 of them before Monday, on Monday, I'm going to announce a winner of a little giveaway that I have, which is going to include all kinds of fun stuff, which I will show you on Monday, with papers and just all kinds of fun things that I have that you can use for these 3 different ideas for the focal points. So before tomorrow, the day 2 of the workshop will be at 12 o'clock tomorrow. Remember, replays will go up into featured so that you can be able to watch the replay if you want to be able to see the steps. You can find the resources to download so that you get on the list, and I'll be emailing out the replays and the finished, I'll probably do like the finished project and everything in there. And then if you want to get on the text list, then you will get a text message before I go live tomorrow. So trying in all different ways, but if you want to be on the email list, you do have to download the resources so that you're on the list to be able to get the replay emailed to you and have the directions, have the supply list and everything, so that I really wanted to make it something you can come back to and be able to repeat and follow these steps for any kind of focal point that you want to do. Anytime where you are thinking, I have these supplies, but I don't know what to do, you'll be able to come back and use one of these 3 techniques to be able to create something with. That is really my goal with all 3 of these pages that I'm teaching you. So I hope that this was easy enough, but yet gave you ideas of how you could be more creative with. And that was partly the reason why I wanted to keep it a little bit smaller like this too. Make sure that you save this little negative stencil because we will be using that for day 2 and day 3. And for tomorrow, for day number 2, we're going to be doing this one, which I'm calling a positive focal point. You will need some markers. So get some markers, some that are permanent, like a Sharpie, some that are more water-based, like this is a Tombow marker. You may have some King Art. This is a brush marker. This is water-based. You may have more of these fine point Sharpies. Get a variety. I'm going to be using pinks and reds. Get a variety of markers that some are water-based, some are permanent. And we are going to do this one tomorrow. You're also going to need a pink color paint and probably you might want a white or a pink and a dark pink, or, just a light and a dark so I'm going to be mixing kind of these 2 together, but we're going to be painting this here. Need some brushes, some water, paper towels, and really that's your piece of watercolor paper that you're going to use. And I did use the stamp pad on this one too. So the stamp pad for tomorrow too. So that will be day 2, and that will be tomorrow at 12 o'clock Eastern. So I'll see you then.